Hi, I'm Paul, the Happy Gilder. Welcome to my channel. In this video, I'm going to introduce Photoshop actions, and then once I've done that, show you how to write a few simple actions that are really handy in a reverse glass workflow. But before we crack on, if you're a fan of gold leaf, reverse glass, sign painting, digital processes and much more, then you're in the right place, because that's all this channel's about, and I try to release a video every week. Also, if you'd like to support the channel, there's a link to my Patreon in the description. I reward my patrons with a different vector design every month. There's also a link to my Etsy shop where I'm selling some of my designs, my Flickr account, and the Happy Gilder Facebook group where we're all kind of sharing ideas, helping each other out. Really good place to go, especially if you're learning. There's some really sort of skilled people on there who have taught me a thing or two. So anyway, that out of the way, let's crack on with it.
Okay, so here in Photoshop, I haven't got anything open yet and I haven't got any of my tool palettes up. So the first thing I'm going to do is just open up any old file, and I've got some pre-prepared here. So let's just open this image. Now, there are a lot of videos on YouTube about how to write actions and stuff like that. So what I'm going to do is kind of try and make this one a bit more directed towards a reverse glass workflow. So some of the processes that I've done in the past, step by step on some of my previous videos, could have been done with actions. So I'm going to sort of go through a very basic one first, and then we'll move on to a couple of more advanced ones. Right, so all I need to do now is get my actions up. So I go to Window and Actions. And these are all the ones that come with Photoshop. So I have never used them, so I can just ignore those. But because I want to set my own actions, I may as well start a new action set. So at the bottom here with the little folder icon, if I just click on that, and you call these whatever you like. For this, I'm just going to call them Happy Gilder. And now any action that I create underneath this is going to go into this folder. And that's handy if I want to kind of export them, load them up on another computer or share them or something like that. But what I'll do for starters is just create something that's a handy little action that you might use on any old file really. So to do that, I'll just go to this little plus icon here. When I do that, that starts a new action. So the name is entirely up to you. It's just for your reference so you know what it is. So what I'm going to do in this case is resize this image to 8 by 10. And then I'm going to save it and close it. So if I just go 8 by 10 and then go to record. Now everything that I do is going to be recorded while this little red icon is selected. When I'm finished what I'm doing, I'll just click stop, and that's the action recorded. So in this case, I'm going to go to image size, and I want to change this so it's 300 dpi, 8 by 10 inches. So let's just firstly go 300, and then change this to 10. That's done the resize. Now I want to save it to a specific location. So I go to File, Save As, and then within here I've already created a folder. If you wanted to create another folder in here, it's not going to record that as part of the action. It's only recording stuff that you're doing in Photoshop. So I'm just going to go in here, keep the file name the same, to save, OK, and then I'm going to close it. And now if I press stop, that's that action recorded. So if I go back into my folder and open up a different image, drag this into Photoshop. All I need to do now is click on 8 by 10, press play, and that has resized it, saved it, and closed it. And I can know that because here it is in here. Now, just getting rid of these out of here. If you have a bulk set of images that you want to do this on, let's say if there's 100 files, what you don't want to be doing is opening 100 files in Photoshop and then running this action. So you can do it without ever opening anything. And what I'll do there is I'm going to go to File, Automate, Batch. Now, what that's done is it's got the Happy Gilder action set selected, the 8 by 10 action selected, but instead of open files, which it would have the option of while you've got things open here, I'm going to go with folder. And then I choose my folder. So let's go So select this folder, and what you can have here, this thing stop for errors, means if there's anything in the action or wrong with the file that doesn't match what is kind of in the file that you've done it on. Let's say, for example, it's got layers or something like that and it can't save it as a JPEG. It will stop for errors. Now you can choose for this to stop for errors, or you can choose to log these errors to a file. And then what that will do is kind of go with the next available option. In the case of a file with layers, it'd probably save it as a copy. So if you want to log the errors to file, this is a good thing to do. If you're going to be doing it on hundreds or thousands of files, you may as well just have this. Otherwise, you'll just have to keep pressing the thing every time it stops. So just choose any file. It's going to go in here, create a new folder. I'm not going to bother naming it because honestly, we'll never open it. But it just means then it's not going to stop when these things are opening. And that's it. So it knows the folder to go to. And just to show you in here, my action output folder, let's open that. There's nothing in here. So now I just go to OK. Now in my action output folder, here they are. So you can do that without even opening anything. So you can see, really, that's a very basic action and quite a good introduction, I think, I suppose, as to what you can do with this. Because there are menial tasks that everyone has to do when you're kind of working with multiple files, especially, if you've got 10 files open and you're going to have to go and save them all to a certain location, you could just do that to one and then just press play on the rest of them. So anyway, let's crack on to a kind of more, not necessarily complex, but an action with a few more steps in it. So I'm going to go back to here. Just going to delete these for now because I'll keep the action saving to this output for now. So let's just start with this file here. Now, one of my recent videos, I did a kind of a Michael Myers mask that I lasered into the back of a mirror. And I did that by making the photo into a kind of halftone pattern, which is when it kind of breaks it up into dots. And in that video, it was only 5 minutes long, but it showed the full process as how to do it manually. Now, I could have done that as an action, and then that would have meant the digital process would have taken seconds rather than minutes. So anyway, while I'm underneath the Happy Gilder folder, I can create a new action. So let's go new action and we'll call this halftone. Now what I want to do first is get my image to the right size. And the reason I'm going to do that is because the halftone settings will differ depending on the size of your canvas. So in this case, I want this to be 8 by 10 so that I know the halftone settings I use are going to be right. So let's do what we've just done, go to image size and change this to our 300 dpi 10 by 8 inch file. Okay, and you can see what I've got here as it's recording. You can drop down on these and see exactly what that's done. And as we get further on, I'll show you why this is really handy and some sort of tips and tricks to know about how to write actions that won't error. So anyway, for now, that's right, we've got the image size. What I also did is it was a black and white image, so I just convert this to grayscale, discard the color information. Then it was the bitmap to get the halftone pattern. Now I'm not going to run through this because the actual detailed process of this is in the other video. But yep, these are all right. Round frequency of 30. Okay, so now if I just zoom in on this, you can see that's converted that to dots. Now you'll also notice that me zooming in hasn't recorded in the action. That's because it's sort of, I don't know, for want of a better word, a benign action. It's not actually doing anything to the image, so it's not recording it, which is handy while you're writing them. So that's how I want that. The only other thing I did was invert it, and that's so that I kind of reverse the colors. So go to image adjustments, invert. Let's change that back to grayscale because it's bitmap at the moment. All of this being recorded, and let's save that to our output location. OK, close and stop. So that's in there. Rather than run it through the automate thing that I showed you before, I'll just show you another way of doing this if you've got just a couple of files. So you can open them up and press play on them. So just pressing play will do it. If you've got multiple files open, the thing that I showed you before, where you'll go to File, Automate and Batch. If you change folder to Open Files, now there's absolutely no point doing it on this one image. I could have just pressed play. But if this was 10 images, rather than keep pressing play on the action, you can just run the action on anything that's open. And then now if I go to my output folder, that's all of those images converted for that kind of laser etching treatment. So that's the basics, going into a little bit more detail, but you can kind of see where it's going. And things what you can do are things where you can record a command. And by that, I mean, it's going to be difficult. Well, it's going to be impossible if you start airbrushing this image. Let's say, for example, if I don't know, wanted to clone this vein out of the top of this head. And, you know, I used my kind of rubber stamp tool or something like that. That is going to remember that exact point on this. So if I recorded this as an action and then ran it on a different image, it's just going to apply my rubber stamp tool to that exact point in that image, which is not going to do anything really unless there's a character in the same position with the same vein on his head. So it's all about the commands that are kind of repetitive across a set of images that we're looking for. So moving on, I'm going to go to something maybe a little bit more advanced now, and something that will be handy. Well, I think would be handy for something potentially doing some brush blending or something like that. And I'll sort of go through where these sort of things could error as well and show you how to correct those. So let's create a new file. Go 8 by 10. Now I'm going to need my layers for this because this is going to require some duplication. So go to Window and Layers. So let's create an action that's going to apply a really nice kind of colored shaded 3D effect to some text. I'll do that, not recording yet because there's some manual processes I need to do. So just click on the screen. It's fine. Let's go with a letter that's got, you know, all sort of different sides of it facing different angles, I suppose. So we'll go with a B because it's got a lot of curvature, some straight lines. You know, it's just a good one to kind of really show up some of that shading. So I'm just scaling that up. And what I'm going to use for this to create a nice shading is the layer styles. And you can get to these in two ways. You can go to layer style, or you can just double click on the layer and it will get your styles up. The one I want to be using is bevel and emboss. Now the reason I'm doing this bit manually is because no matter what you do in terms of setting your angle of light within an action, for some reason that doesn't record. It will revert back to 90 degrees when you shut down your computer and open it again. What I mean by the angle of light, I can show you if I up the size on this bevel. So this light source is coming directly from the top. You can see that, the way it's lighting up the top of this, and then that's gradually getting darker, and then there's no light going on the bottom. Now, I'm not saying that looks bad, but I think, you know, something like a 45-degree angle, you get more out of that than you do from the 90. So I go in and manually set this, and that's all. And the rest of it will record. It will record the kind of size, the depth, and things like that. So for now, I'm just going to go OK, and then I'm going to just delete that because I know that the angle of light has been recorded now while I've got Photoshop open. One other thing, before I start this action, I'm going to make sure that I'm selected on the layer, and I'll show you why now. So let's start this, and I'm going to call this action 3D letter. Now the first thing I'm going to do is rename this layer, and that's because if I come off it and go back on it like this, so that will say select background layer and then select layer B. what that means is if I want to run this action and I've got a letter that's not B, it's going to stop and it's going to fail. So I want to be selected on it so that I can rename it to something that's going to be generic. Now, it doesn't matter if you do this halfway through the process and then think, damn, I've done that, I've got to start the whole thing again. You don't have to start it again. You just stop the action and you just delete any bits that you don't want. So I don't want that. I actually don't want that. I could have just dragged them into the bin. You can do it in multiples as well. So I just click record again. So now I haven't done anything. I've got this selected. And if I double click here on the layer name, this layer 0, and when I drop that down, it says change the current layer to layer 0, so the layer I was selecting on rather than layer B. So that's the importance about getting that bit right. But like I say, easy to change. Just go back in your action. Even if you don't realize you've done it till the end, you'll press play to run the action on another letter. It will show you or come up as an error, and then you can just go in, delete those bits of that, and kind of record and then redo them. It's easy enough. So this is started. I've renamed the layer. I now want to apply the layer style. So let's get the style, bevel and emboss. It will have recorded what I did last time. Now, all I really care about is the angle of light. So something like this, because what I'm going to do is duplicate this like I've done in another previous video that I'll put a link up the top, because all I want is 1 pixel's worth of this kind of gradient. So I go OK. Let's just pop this back on screen. Right click, duplicate the layer. And then what I'm going to do is press Control and T to transform. Now, if you follow my channel, you'll have seen this technique in some recent videos where it's called a duplicate transform. So I'm going to zoom in because how far you zoomed in does make a difference. What I'm going to do is I'm going to nudge this layer here using my arrow keys. I'm going to go up 1 and across 1. Now, I'm not sure if you saw that. That nudged sort of 1 pixel or 1 point up and 1 point to the left as well. Then I'm going to press return, and that's recorded that. Now, it doesn't matter. I don't have to be zoomed in that far anymore. So if I press Control and 0, that brings you back to the screen. And now I just hold down Control, Shift, and alternate, and then I just tap the T key. And you can see it's not actually shown in the preview yet, but it will once I let go and stop tapping. So I'm just tapping, it's adding a duplicate of that layer, and then when I let go, you can see that's created a really nice kind of, shaded 3D letter that, it'd be a really good guide for doing brush blending. And really, all I want to keep is this top one. So if I then click on the one below it, I'm gonna go all the way down with this, Shift select, then I'm gonna press Control and E. That's merged them together. I may as well rename this layer. So let's just call this 3D. And clicking on this, you can now stop this action. Now, you can do what you like with this now. That's just going to run an action to kind of give you a 3D effect underneath your still live type layer. Now, you might not see what I'm doing here, but I can then still edit this type layer to, create a different color that contrasts with the drop shadow. So it's really just to get that nice 3D effect. So let's just turn that off so it's a little bit better. But just to show you that works, I'll delete these. And you can always close these down a little bit so that they're not showing the whole process that you did. So let's just go again. I'm going to press T. Let's go for a different letter. Let's go for an S. Select it. Even go for a different font. So I don't know, I've never used this, but let's try it anyway. So scale that up. I've got it selected. That's all I need to do. So it's 3D letter and then press play. There you go. Really, really nice, simple little action that I think comes in really handy. Now, again, I've set this up for an 8x10 canvas. If you were to do it a lot smaller or you were going to do it on a bigger canvas, that's going to make a difference. So if I just bin that, let's do the same thing, but on this letter, a smaller size, and you're going to see this isn't going to look very good, really. So it all depends. It's worth writing the action to know how you're going to repeat it and then what size and stuff like that. And not saying that looks bad, but it's certainly not the kind of effect I was looking for. So that's a few things you can do with actions and the instructions around kind of writing them and editing them. But I'm just going to go over one more thing, and that's just to work with a bit of a tidier interface. Because although this sort of screen here is good for seeing what you're doing when you're recording and obviously editing and amending any actions, it's unsightly and it's a bit of a pain if you've got like 50 actions and you've got to scroll through the whole lot and kind of, close some of the actual commands that have been done. So firstly, what I'm going to do is get rid of these default actions that are, preset into Photoshop. I've never used them and I don't know anyone who has. So let's just delete these. So all I've got now in terms of actions are my Happy Gilder actions. Now what I can do with each individual one is assign a color to it. So let's say I go down here, I'm going to go to action options, and the color I assign, let's just go in the order that they're in. I'm going to go, that one is red. Change the options for the others, orange, and yellow. And the colors can come in handy when you've got a load of these. Let's say, for example, if I've written an action that is resizing from, I don't know, to 16 by 20, I'd probably color code that red so that all of my red actions are resizing. Same with kind of 3D. The 3D effect that I did, I was nudging the text one up, one across, but you could do a different one where you're nudging it one across and one down or something like that. So you'd keep all of the similar actions under the same color. And then the way they work is by switching from the kind of edit mode into button mode. And now you've got these actions color coded and they are literally just that, a button. So if I just go to my type tool, do exactly what I have been doing with the 3D letter. Let's just scale that up, pop that here, and then all I need to do is click on the button that says 3D letter, and that's going to run that action for me. And this is just so much tidier having this like this. And obviously, like I said, if you've got 50 actions all color coded, just so much easier to work with. So that's it for this video. I hope that was useful and I hope you have fun writing your own actions, and more to the point, I hope that it does save you some time and you can sort of really see the benefits of adding them into your workflow. So anyway, that's it. Until next time, cheers.